Cannot make this decision. It is too difficult.
Toy? Oh, it's not a toy.
Ask again later.
Taken out of bounds. Rodgers along the sideline. Another one. They're still in deep trouble at midfield. They tried to do a couple of... The ball is still loose as they get it to Rodgers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the field is out of the field.
He's not good enough.
Has some time. Now he scrambles away from one hit. Looks. Uncorks a deep one for the end zone. Thalen is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown!
Welcome, everyone, to Crazy 8 College Football Challenge presented on Gameday Sports Radio. Each week, our experts break down 10 college football matchups, revealing who will win and the reasons why. Our panel, the coach, with over 30 years of collegiate experience as a player, coach, administrator, you won't find anyone with better insight, objectivity, or wit when it comes to college football. Coaching from the plains of Alabama to the deserts of New Mexico, calling plays when there were only 5 wide receivers on a team, not on the field at the same time, Boji Wood has seen it all and has been a part of college football's evolution, which is why he is one of the most respected minds in college athletics. From Texas, there you go. From Texas, we have the teacher, Steve Mock. Deep in the heart of Texas, Steve's coverage of college football dates back to the days of the Southwest Conference, the Big 8, the Wishbone, and the dreaded Bowl Championship Series. Steve has worked in sports talk radio and was even a contestant on ESPN's reality TV show, Dream Job. Steve's expertise in men's and women's athletics is so diverse that he was just named his school's cross-country head coach. How you feeling about that, Steve?
You know what? We're undefeated, 1-0.
And we have Mr. Basketball. You mentioned the name Latch in the Southeast, and the response will be which one? Will is a product of too many generations to count of Latches who have excelled in the gym as players, coaches, trainers, and administrators. While being recognized as a leader on the court, Will also handles broadcasting for high school sports in Birmingham, consisting of football, volleyball, basketball, and he recently launched High School Speed Network, which is dedicated to developing sports reporting and broadcasting for students. And I'm your host, GC. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Want to say I appreciate the intro and want to make sure that when my time comes that you write my obituary, because nobody can make me sound as good as you.
Well, speaking, Coach, it's funny that you mentioned that, because speaking of writing, you were the first one to get something from a fan. We actually got something from a fan, and I was actually able to bring it on and show you. And you have it in Meyer. So let me bring this up here. Let me see if I can do it. Okay. There you go, Coach. An autograph from your number one. Apparently you're the number one fan of the 8-ball. So he's sending you an autographed 8-ball to his number one fan, the coach. He signed your champ, Mr. Magic 8-ball. And I think he taunts his 9 wins and 1 loss last week.
I appreciate the recognition from the Magic 8-ball and have learned my lesson. I will no longer taunt the 8-ball.
Hey, man, it didn't work out too bad for you last week because as it happened, you started off 0-2, but you finished pretty strong. And I'll tell you, it's been fun. The fans got into it last week. We had a lot of fan participation. And surprisingly, that Duke-Virginia game came down to making the difference between whether or not a few fans were going to be put into the drawing to see if they would qualify to show their picks on here tonight. And they all unfortunately had Virginia. Duke won, which made the 8-ball 9-1, and none of the fans. And so they came out strong and early, though, this week. So that said, let's go ahead and get to it, unless you guys have anything else you want to add tonight. All right, Steve, I'm going to kick off the Southwest Conference matchup to you, or Southeastern Conference matchup to you. Early game, I'm not sure that they even know how to get to Death Valley at 11 a.m. Tennessee at LSU on ESPN.
We got the Volunteers looking to start 5-0 for the first time since 2016, while LSU is looking to add on to their 4-game winning streak. Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker is completing 71% of his passes. He's thrown 8 touchdowns with no interceptions. The Vols also can run the ball averaging a shade under 200 yards a game rushing. For LSU, Jaden Daniels hits on 68% of his throws. He's tossed 6 TDs and no interceptions. Neither quarterback in this game has thrown an INT. LSU averages just a shade under 200 yards per game running the rock. It's always tough to win at Tiger Stadium, but Tennessee has an explosive attack. And since LSU is coming off the hard-fought win on the road at Auburn and the Volunteers are well-rested coming off their bye, I'll take the Vols.
There you go. Will.
I agree with what Steve said. I think Tennessee's offense is just too much for LSU. I think they're, like you said, they're almost putting up about 50 points a game. So I got Tennessee in this one.
Yeah, if you look at Tennessee, it seems like their one Achilles heel right now seems to be defense, especially passing defense. And I don't think LSU has had anybody yet to consistently put the ball in the air. So I think that's a problem for LSU. I'm going to go with Tennessee as well. Coach?
Yeah, I think the Tigers' injuries are going to bite them this week. They're very, as Steve said, very beat up from that game last week in Auburn. Even though they came back and won, Daniels even had to be pulled from that game with an injury. He'll probably play. He won't be 100%. Again, the early kick, as you mentioned, George. And if it were a night game, I'd give the Tigers a little bit more chance. But I like Tennessee in this one also.
So we all like Tennessee. Well, Coach, go ahead and say it. The 8 ball will be 0-1 because he likes LSU.
I'm not. I'll say I'm going to be 0-1 at the end of that game.
Look at
Not
that.
disrespecting the 8 ball. Yeah, respecting the 8 ball.
8 ball likes the magic of Death Valley. Okay, Coach. Well, why don't you take us on to the next game? A little TCU, 11 o'clock game. Steve, I don't know what you did to get all these 11 a.m. games so you get to bed early, but TCU on Fox Sport 1 at Kansas. A matchup of teams of 4-0 and Kansas 5-0 for the first time since 2009.
Listen, this is the most unlikely undefeated matchup of the year this deep into the season. I mean, ESPN Gameday is rolling into Lawrence, Kansas this week for the first time ever. Now, what you've got to do with these two teams, you start with quarterback. Max Duggan, of course, with TCU, he had a great week last week versus that Oklahoma defense or non-defense. And Jalen Daniels from Kansas, he's lighting it up also. There's the top 3 rated quarterbacks in the nation. 2 of them are going to be playing in this game. Daniels is rated first. Duggan is third. Number 2 happens to be the Heisman front runner, C.J. Stroud at Ohio State. All that being said, and I like this Kansas story, but I think TCU is the more complete team. Sonny Dykes has really brought a new energy into that program. And I'm going to go with the Horned Frogs and TCU in this one.
Steve.
TCU was explosive against Oklahoma. Kansas continues to win. The past one was ugly against Iowa State. They needed 3 missed field goals to hold on for dear life. I like what Sonny Dykes has going on in Fort Worth, and I'll say he can take it on the road. I'll take TCU.
Well,
yeah, I'm not ready for the Magic to run out just yet, but I think it's going to. I think game day will be in the house. Obviously, it's 11 a.m. kickoff, but other than that, when it comes down to football, I think TCU is just the better team.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you all there too. I think TCU just more complete. I think Sonny Dykes inherited some weapons there, and I like what TCU did last week. And I just think Kansas. I think the story continues. I think they have a great season, but I just don't think they pulled this one out. I'm going with TCU as well. And it's a clean sweep. The 8 ball likes TCU.
Thank God.
So, maybe I'm not going to comment on that one. All right, Will, I think this one's kind of a little bit of a trap matchup for you to break down for us. Is Arkansas at Mississippi State, 11 a.m. game on the SEC network. What are your thoughts here?
Well, Steve doesn't really like to refer to last year, but if you remember, the Arkansas-Mississippi State game was wild. Mississippi State scored with about a little over 2 minutes left. to take the lead. Arkansas drove all the way down the field and scored, went for 2 to go up 3, and then Mississippi State drove down the field and missed their third field goal of the game to lose. So I think they got a little bad taste in their mouth. I think they've been ready for this one. After losing to LSU the last 2 weeks, Mississippi State's put up 45 against Bowling Green and 42 against A&M. I think they've been playing really well. But I got the Cowbells at home at 11 a.m. I think the Bulldogs are just too hot right now.
Yeah, I tell you, I was leaning towards Arkansas but I think the question mark at quarterback and being on the road is going to be a factor in this. And I also just think, Arkansas has lost some tight games, and they expended a lot of energy last week to try to rally back against Alabama, and I think that takes a toll. So quarterback problems on the road, lots of energy. I'm going to go with Mississippi State. Coach?
This is a game you look at. Arkansas, you would think they're going to come in dragging their tails. They lost one that they shouldn't have lost in Arlington to A&M. Last week against Alabama, after falling way behind, they clawed back into the game. And if they could have gotten a stop and gotten the ball back, who knows? They could have scored and gone ahead of Alabama, and then who knows what happens. My son, my youngest son, Cater, he played and was a student coach at Mississippi State for Dan Mullen back about, 8-10 years ago. He graduated in 15. But all that being said, I love Sam Pittman. I think he's going to rally the troops. He's going to go on the road. He's going to call the Hogs. They're going to get a win. I'm taking Arkansas.
All right, Steve.
Hi, Mississippi State is playing good on defense, actually, for Mike Leach, forcing 4 turnovers against Texas A&M. Arkansas gives up too many big plays for me. I look for Will Rogers to sling it around and get the win for the Bulldogs.
Steve, you do realize that's 2 weeks in a row that you've mentioned Mike Leach and defense in the same sentence.
I'm 1-0. Let's try to make it 2.
Okay, just making sure. Just make sure, because that's not usually a part of the same vocabulary. Well, Coach, you and the 8-Ball must have had a conversation this week, because he likes the Hogs as well.
Good. So we'll either ride together or die together, one or the other.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one, Coach, because this is always a classic game that I think nationally is looked forward to. I know in Texas it is as part of the Texas State Fair. Texas, and it's Texas is at Oklahoma, but it's a Cotton Bowl neutral site game. So 11 a.m. game on ABC, Texas at Oklahoma.
I will say this and mean it, is I could care less if I go to another college football game. Now, I have to sometimes for work, but as far as just a fan, nothing pulls me. However, this is one of few games that could get me to go as a quote-unquote fan. It is a true 50-50 split of the tickets. You can walk into the Cotton Bowl and you can sit on television. I've never seen this game in person, but you can walk in and you can see the stadium. One side's burnt orange, the other side's crimson. And, I call it the Red River Shootout. I know a few years ago that became politically incorrect and it became the Red River rivalry and the Red River Showdown. But to me, it'll always be the Red River Shootout. Think of these names: Wilkerson, Royal, Switzer, Akers, Stoops, Brown, for standing on the sideline coaching these teams. Players like Novus, the Selman brothers, Campbell, Pruitt, McCoy, Murray. Now, I just named all those guys, and I left out Hall of Fame coaches and Heisman Trophy winners. Okay, that's how great this matchup is. Usually it's a top 5 matchup. Most of the time has national championship implications down the road. However, right now, both teams are 3-2. They come in unranked. A quarterback situation, they're both coming into this game with a lot of questions. Of course, Quinn Ewers was hurt against Alabama. Hudson Card has played solid for the Longhorns. But there's a good chance that Ewers is going to be back for this game. Oklahoma, they're in bad shape. Dylan Gabriel went down with a concussion in last week's game versus TCU. He did not look good walking off the field with everything that's going on in concussion protocol today. It's going to surprise me if he plays, and they're going to have to turn to Davis Bevel, who's a Pitt transfer to Oklahoma. You know, he didn't look that bad last week. And it's not like that Oklahoma was in the game when Gabriel went out. They were already down, 24 points or what have you. This game boils down to defense. The Sooner defense, it started very strong. And it looked like Clemson defenses. And you thought, man, Venables has turned this around quickly. However, the last couple of weeks, it's looked like Oklahoma defenses from under Lincoln Riley. I don't think that Oklahoma can get in a scoring contest with Texas and expect to win. And in this game, I think the secret weapon is Gary Patterson, special assistant to the head coach, Steve Sarkisian. He was brought into this role for games like Alabama and games like the Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout. And I like Texas. I like Texas a lot in this game.
All right, Steve.
Coach, mentioning all those names, you got me fired up. I'm ready to run through the wall. I wish the game were kicking off right now. Last year, Texas was up 28-7 before eventually going down 55-48. OU's defense looks awful. Longhorns are looking to get QB Quinn Ewers back, as you mentioned. And with Dylan Gabriel banged up, I went to about 30 consecutive Texas OU games. Please make sure you're saying it right. It is Texas OU. I've only got 2 words for my pick. Hook 'em.
There you go. You want to add the horns to that hook 'em there, Will?
Absolutely. These guys said everything I was going to say. But Coach did get me fired up. I was over here about to start scrolling on StubHub and finding some tickets and some flights.
That's a tough ticket to find, and I can tell you that from living there. And I'll tell you, Coach, you kind of stole. I think you stole the show for everybody on that, because that was the one name that I had. I think it's going to be the difference maker is Gary Patterson. That's what he was brought in for. And on top of that, I think with Texas, you got 2 solid quarterback options. So they got if they go with Ewers and he's still a little sluggish, they could go back to Cards. So I'm going with Texas as well. So clean sweep here at Texas, except for 8-ball likes OU. So maybe the 8-ball's a little sluggish. I think maybe you threw a curve at him this week and got him off his game, Coach. We'll see. Steve, Big Ten, another early matchup. Purdue, who has suffered some late last-minute losses, coming in at 3-2 against Maryland, at Maryland, 11 a.m. on the Big Ten Network.
All right, well, we've been picking a lot of the same teams this week so far. I think we might get a little diversity on this one. As you said, Purdue's 3-2, coming off a hard-fought defensive struggle against Minnesota, taking down the Golden Gophers 20-10. Devin Maccabee led the way with 112 yards and a touchdown on only 11 carries. The Terps are 4-1, coming into this game off a 27-13 home victory over Michigan State. Running back Antoine Littleton paced Maryland with 120 yards and 1 score. I like the Boilermakers defense. They held the Gophers to just 47 yards rushing, and they picked off 3 passes. I like what Mike Locksley is doing. He's at Maryland, but I think the step up in competition trips the Terps. I'll take Boilermaker.
There you go. Will.
I was really hoping Coach was next because I wanted to see what he said. I might change my pick, but I'm gonna stick with Maryland. I got Maryland.
Steve, I like where you're going there, and I agree with you. That was my thought as well going into it. And I think Purdue learned a little bit from those last late losses, and I think they've kind of learned how to play to win at the end and not how to play not to lose. And I just like what they have going up there. I like what Mike Locksley's doing, but I think Purdue's too much for him this week. I'm going with Purdue.
I want to see if Coach has forgiven Purdue from that Syracuse debacle.
I have forgiven them. I really think this is an underappreciated game. there's, again, as you said, there are 3 losses between both teams. And if you take away the joke loss in Syracuse, the Boilermakers, they're coming into this game with 1 loss. The thing that I see is Maryland, their 1 loss was against number 4 Michigan in the Big House. And I thought they went in and they played well up there. They were not run out of the stadium by any means. It's a tough pick for me. There are things about Purdue that I really like. There are things about Maryland that I really like. I think Tagovailoa is very capable at quarterback. And I'm going with Maryland, but only because it's at Maryland. If this game were in West Lafayette, I'd be going with Purdue. But I'm going with Maryland.
All right. And the 8 ball like coach, you must be you guys must have been reading the tea leaves this week. The 8 ball likes Maryland as well. So 8 ball likes Maryland as well. That brings us to our next game out on the West Coast, Fox Sports, 2:30 p.m. A game that quite likely could have Pac-12 championship implications. We've got Utah at UCLA. I say Utah at UCLA very lightly because UCLA is only averaging 27,000 fans per game this year in the Rose Bowl, which covers 93,000. That place is empty. And for some reason, they continue to see a sharp drop in attendance under Chip Kelly. So it's almost not even worse. I mean, Utah will probably have more fans there. I like what Utah's doing. I like their experience. I know they lost Kuthi, the tight end, and that offense relies heavily on the tight end. But they've had some other people step up. I think their running back situation has gotten a little bit better. I think they're going to see some Tavion Thomas, who has been held off the field a little bit because of some accountability issues in the classroom, it sounds like, has been doing what he needs to, and I think they expect him to have a much bigger role. I think that I just think they're probably a little bit more solid team. I think UCLA is a little bit more explosive, but I'm going to go with Utah on the road at UCLA, and that's the way I see it. Coach?
And you're right, George. UCLA has not drawn well at the Rose Bowl, but historically they've not drawn well there unless it was a marquee game. Now I did not go to this game, but I believe it was 2000, maybe Mike DuBose's last year, whatever year that was, when Alabama opened up with UCLA in the Rose Bowl. 2000. Alabama had half of the stadium with Crimson. UCLA, again, unless it's a big rivalry game like USC, you just don't get a huge crowd there for the Bruins. And if they started bouncing some basketballs at halftime, it'd fill up really quick. But one thing, I think UCLA's administration, I think their patience with Chip Kelly is beginning to pay off. I think that they bought into his system now. I think he's got the kind of roster that he needs to succeed. I'm going with the Bruins in this one, UCLA.
There you go. Steve.
Both teams coming off impressive wins. Utah's averaging 42 points a game and giving up just 14. UCLA's offense is almost as stout with 41 a game, but the key difference is defense. The Bruins giving up 21 a game. Utah's won 5 straight in this series, and I think the Utes can control Chip Kelly and the Bruins. Give me Utah.
All right, Will, you gonna make it a tie? You gonna go?
I think Steve stole my notes because I'm pretty sure he just read word for word what I had, but I got Utah. I think their defense is much better.
All right. Coach all out on an island by himself, and he's going to remain out there by himself because the 8-ball likes Utah. So I guess the 8-ball can't find its way to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Probably couldn't get a seat out there, huh?
Maybe not, but I'm not arguing with the 8-ball. Much respect.
Coach, got a unique one here, North Carolina, 3:00 game, ESPN2, going down to Miami. Miami, obviously, some high expectations to start the season. Has benched their quarterback. What are you thinking?
Listen, Hurricanes started out 2-0. That loss to Texas A&M, it gutted them. There's no other way to describe it. And I've coached teams that's happened to, and it's hard to recover. I mean, they were, Middle Tennessee just skull drugged them up and down the field. And Mac Brown has the Tar Heels sitting at 4-1. Only lost to Notre Dame, and they were very flat that game. This offense for the Tar Heels has been very productive. And they're, if they had any defense at all, they'd be 5-0. But I think Gene Chiswick's starting to get that defense turned around. And even though the Hokies aren't an offensive juggernaut, they did hold Virginia Tech to 10 points last week. Their quarterback, though, Drake May, whose father was an outstanding quarterback at North Carolina back in the day, he's thrown for almost 1,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, and only one interception. Miami, they thought they had their savior at quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke. He was going to bring back the Testaverdes, the Steve Wash, those type guys, the Bernie Kosars. And listen, just like the team, he started very hot, but he's sizzled out. He's been replaced. The Hurricanes are allowing less than 100 yards rushing right now. And if North Carolina can't run the ball at all, they're going to lose. But I think they get just enough run game to open up the pass lanes. I think the Tar Heels are going to go down and win on the road. I'm picking North Carolina.
Steve.
Miami was the preseason favorite to win the ACC's Coastal Division. Y'all mentioned the road loss to Texas A&M, but I think even more devastating to their season was that home loss to Middle Tennessee State. Things have changed the outlook down in in Miami. UNC's 4-1, coming off a 41-10 thrashing of Virginia Tech. And being a Longhorn fan, you think I would know better than to trust Mac Brown, but I'm going to take them on the road to win at Miami.
Will, I don't think there's much question mark here where you're going. I mean, each week you let us know that you're a closet Tar Heel fan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with Coach, I think Chiswick's got the guys going the right way. I got the Tar Heels.
Like you, Steve, I have a hard time. Every time you seem like you think that Mac Brown's got one in his back pocket, that's the one that seems to sneak up and bite him. But I think Coach kind of mentioned it. I think one of the, I think it's a bonus anytime you can get a head coach with that's, almost an expert, not an expert, but a guru in his, his coordinator position in Gene Chiswick. And not only do you get just one of the best defensive coordinators probably in the country, but you also get somebody with head coaching experience. And I think that's one of the things that probably helps Mac Brown keep that from happening here. I'm going with North Carolina as well.
And just remember, a lot of people don't remember this. It slips their mind. Texas in that national championship game that stopped that USC offense, who was that defensive coordinator? Gene Chiswick.
Was, and he's been great everywhere he's been, and I think that's I think what he's done as a defense coordinator somewhat gets clouded or washed away a little bit by what happened down at Auburn, because he was probably one of the premier defensive coordinators in the country at the time, and probably could have had his pick of jobs at that point in time, and did well down at Auburn. Just tailed off a little bit for him, and I think he gets a little bit too much blame for what happened down there. So, and the 8-Ball believes in Mac Brown as well. So, Steve, I got a call this week from Rome, since you were the only one to support, even the Catholic on the show did not support the Irish a couple weeks ago when they did dismantle North Carolina. So the Pope personally asked for you to break down this game for us.
All right. This is a tough one. Notre Dame came into the season ranked 5th in the preseason poll. Losses to Ohio State and Marshall have dropped the Irish. BYU 4-1 with only a loss to Oregon on their resume. The Cougars are ranked 16th, averaging 34 points per contest. BYU quarterback Jaron Hall has thrown 12 touchdowns with just one interception this year. Notre Dame beats the soft teams, but I don't think BYU fits that description. And to be honest, in this one, I don't really trust either team, but I'll take the Cougars in a close one.
Will.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know who to trust in this one, but I'm going to go Notre Dame coming off a bye week, coming off of the win against North Carolina. I got the Fighting Irish in this one.
Well, all right. I'm still not sold on Notre Dame. I'm not sure. I mean, they played well. They definitely rallied, but I think BYU is going to grind it out, even though it is at home for Notre Dame. I do think it'll be close, but I just think BYU is just still a little bit more consistent, and I'm not sure the quarterback situation is totally figured out up there in Notre Dame. So I got BYU. Coach?
Yeah, Notre Dame is going to be playing with a backup quarterback for most of the season. And they do seem to have regained their footing after that 0-2 start. As Steve mentioned, BYU's lone loss to Oregon. And Steve, where was that game played?
Oregon.
I think that's the key to this game is that BYU, tough football team, good football team, but historically, they have struggled on the road in marquee games. And for that reason, I'm going with the Irish. Go Notre Dame.
Well, the 8 Ball agrees with Steve and George that BYU can get it done on the road. It likes BYU. So, but we'll see. Notre Dame. I think this is going to be. I think this game tells us something about Notre Dame. If Notre Dame can get this done, maybe they did find some things and correct it, and maybe it kind of salvages their season. I think if they lose this one, I think they're in for a long year. So, Big Ten Network, 6:30 p.m. Iowa at Illinois. It's been a while since Brett Bielema has been relevant, but I think if you look, he has been grinding it back out, and he has stayed the course at Illinois, and Illinois has kind of stayed the course with him. He is, his team's only giving up 70 yards rushing per game, but I think the stat here that kind of sold it for me on which way to go on this one is Iowa is only averaging 242 yards per game, while giving up 254 yards per game. I mean, their offense is atrocious. And it's amazing to me that Kirk Ferentz seems to get in the hot seat, and then he rallies back and gets a good team. And then it's like for every time he takes a couple of steps forward, he always takes 5 steps back. And I think this is a year where he's actually 10 steps back. I see Illinois, and I think Illinois is big in this one. Coach?
Agree with everything that you said there. And Kirk Ferentz is going to have to make some tough decisions. His son is the offensive coordinator. There's a lot of grumblings. People are not liking this. They see no imagination in this offense. It's not being productive. Brett Bielema sitting at 4-1 with Illinois. Their only loss is a second week to Indiana, and they played flat that game. They just came out with no emotion, and it bit them. I think there may be a little talk about Paul Chryst getting fired at Wisconsin. And, hey, maybe we can get Brett back up here. And that may be a little distraction to Illinois this week, but I think he'll calm the waters there. I think he's found a home. I think the only job in the Big Ten that he would leave Illinois for is probably Iowa. And, as you said, who knows what may happen there. This is a night game in Champaign. I think that the galloping ghost of Red Grange makes an appearance, and I'm going Illinois.
Yeah, Will.
Same. I got Illinois night game. I think it's just too much for Iowa.
Steve, jumped right over you there on purpose. Giving you a hard time. I thought you
Illinois is coming off the 34-10 thumping that cost Paul Chryst his job. They hadn't won at Wisconsin in 20 years. Started 4-1 for the first time since 2015. Iowa's won 8 straight in this series. But to me, the Bielema boys are looking pretty hungry. I'll take the Illini.
Yeah, that's probably what happened in that Indiana game. I think the buffet was closed. So we all got Illinois, and the 8 Ball likes Illinois as well. I just don't know how Iowa. I just don't. I don't know how their offense can get so anemic so often, but it does. But the 8 ball likes Illinois. That brings us to our last matchup of the night. Florida State at NC State, 7 p.m. game on the ACC network. Will, why don't you break that one down for us, since you revealed what the amazing atmosphere at FSU Doak Campbell Stadium a couple weeks ago for us.
Yikes! Yeah, both teams are coming off a loss. Last week, both by 10 points to two pretty good football teams, Wake Forest and Clemson. Florida State scoring about 34 points a game. NC State scoring about 33. So, offensively, I think it's pretty even. I think this game is going to come down to defense and whose defense is better. Florida State's allowing 21.2. NC State is only allowing about 15.4. So, in my opinion, that gives them the upper hand. With the 3-point spread, I think it's going to be a close football game. But it being a night game at NC State, I got the Wolfpack getting their first ACC win at home.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I haven't been sold that Florida State's all the way back yet. I still think there's some holes there, and I think being on the road, they got down last week, and really, even though I think they rallied back, they made that game look a little closer than it really was. I like NC State in this one. I think they've played a little bit more solid and consistent football all year. Coach?
Both teams, as we said, picked up their first loss last week. Wake Forest went on the road and beat a Florida State team. And I will say, I did like the fight in Florida State. I did like that. However, they're going on the road. I know Mike Norvell's going to try to rally them. You've got two hungry teams. I think this is going to be a great game to watch. Wolfpack is at home. They've got a bad taste in their mouth from that trip to Clemson. And I'm going North Carolina State at home.
Steve.
Yeah, NC State couldn't handle Clemson, and they didn't score until well after the outcome had been settled. Neither team here wants to start a 2-game losing skid. But like you guys have already covered most of the info, I think it'll be a tight one, but I'll go with the home team. I'll take the Wolfpack.
All right. So got a lot of consistency here between all of us this week. And 8 ball likes NC State, so clean sweep there. So don't see anybody making up a lot of ground this week, but I will tell you, we do have a lot of fan picks in. Yeah, it was fun last week to see so many fans. We got a lot of fans that submitted their picks online. We got a lot more this week. A lot of people got them in early. It's very easy to do. We get them posted, obviously by their username that they put out there. A lot of fans were getting some messages on our message boards on Gameday Sports Radio, Instagram, and kind of talking a little trash to a couple of people back and forth, and that was fun to see. So it's fun to have the fans in there challenging the 8 ball. And I think the fans realized last week, the 8 ball's not a toy. You better bring it. You better bring it all. So 9-1 was solid, but as quickly as he can go 9-1, he can go 1-9. So haven't seen it yet, but we'll see. So, but appreciate you guys. You guys got anything you want to add tonight? Anything interesting out there heading into the weekend?
I tell you, I think there's a lot of focus on the Alabama A&M game, and I really think this could be the true beginning of the end for Jimbo Fisher, depending upon how ugly this gets, because I know that his buyout is $90 million, but as Steve can attest to this, $90 million is not anything to a bunch of ex-Aggies that want to get rid of somebody.
Yeah, Coach Steve and I touched on this a little bit earlier in the week real quick. I don't want to go too much longer, but it just seems to me Jimbo's lost a little bit of focus on football, and he's spent a lot more time on some of the, I wouldn't even say off the field issues, but some of the, NIL, the battle with Saban this year, recruiting, trying to, and all these different things. It didn't really focus on the X's and O's. And maybe he just felt like he could rely on his staff to do that, but it almost feels like he's kind of lost it a little bit there as far as the strategy of the game is more than the PR of the game.
You have to decide what type of head coach you're going to be. Are you going to be a CEO type head coach? Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's what Coach Bryant gravitated to toward the end of his career. That's what Coach Dye was when I was at Auburn. It's what Tommy Tuberville was. Steve Spurrier, though, he's going to call offensive plays. When he was at Florida, he was at South Carolina, he had a right-hand man named Jamie Speronis. Jamie took care of everything that didn't have to do with football. And yes, Spurrier ended up being the mouthpiece, obviously, but Jamie Speronis, he was the guy that took care of everything that didn't have to do with X's and O's of football. And you can't serve two or three masters. And I think that's Jimbo maybe trying to do that right now.
Hey, Steve, what's the feeling over there? Obviously, Quinn Ewers coming back, but Hudson Card has played pretty solid. You know, Quinn Ewers had not really established himself as a starter, you know, being a first-year player. Any thought over there if Quinn Ewers does bounce back in? Any dissension on the team or any,
Yeah, I don't think dissension, but I think seeing how Sark was so reluctant to name a starter in the preseason, I think most people are expecting to see both quarterbacks play in this one. It wouldn't surprise me if Hudson Card gets the start, and then depending on how things go after a couple of series, seeing the heroic return, hopefully, of Quinn Ewers.
Well, there you go. Well, just two nice little actually bonus points there to get at the end.
Yeah. And you think about this too. If he can get through this game without Quinn Ewers taking a hit and giving him an extra week of rest, that just plays into their favor too.
Yeah, well, apparently, according to Sark, he could have gone last week, and they specifically held him out. They felt like they wanted one more week of rest just to give him that pad if he needed it. And again, I think we all kind of agreed on that matchup that having the bonus of a second strong quarterback, either way they got to go, probably kind of lifts them and puts Oklahoma's in a hole there. So, all right, anything else, boys? It's going to be an exciting weekend. I think, a couple teams on here, they're going to determine, I think you're going to see which way their season's headed, especially Notre Dame. But it's going to be fun. As always, enjoy talking to you. Everybody out there, don't forget to check out Inside the Numbers on Friday around noontime with Coach and Mike Bernard from Gameday Sports Radio, where they give you some additional detailed analysis on some of the games and preview some stuff heading into the weekend. And Steve and I will be on Sunday night to reveal. Hopefully, we'll have somebody that beats the 8 ball this week, and we'll be making a drawing and a selection of a fan out there that's going to get to reveal their picks and also as well as qualify for the end of the season drawing for some cash and some exciting prizes. So everybody, you guys have a great weekend. Looking forward to finally some fall weather and some great college football.
Talk to you next week.